you and have you join us. We were already talking, so now we're all talking together. Uh, Basically, the word of the day is qualify. And I thought qualify would be a great word, especially if you're talking about entrepreneurship, because people are qualifying for loans, people are qualifying future employees, opportunities. So qualifying is really putting it all together and seeing what you got, and does it measure up to what you need to get through something or to acquire something or achieve something. This is the hour of Empower, LinkedIn and YouTube live stream, and chat is now open, and really look forward to comments. Kelly's here. Kelly's here even when she's not here, but she's here more when she is, because her influence and her ability to really simulate ideas, thoughts, and transform them into language and post. And her podcast, Awesome Journey with Christy Howard, which was on Tuesdays, 1 p.m. Got to see it. I watched the episode yesterday. It was very, very inspiring. I mean, I see people that you wonder, how do they do what they do and still be good people? So anyways, with that, chat's open. And I want to kind of share that today we've got Carl with us. Carl's been with us and will be with us every other Tuesdays. We got a consistent schedule. Carl's focused on capital. That's why he's the capital coach. Just launched a newsletter that's very successful, and not only in numbers, but in knowledge and the ability to learn from it and continue to optimize it. So, Carl, why don't you say hello to the audience, share kind of where you've been in the last 2 weeks, and what your first thoughts on Qualify is.
Sure. So thanks to everybody for the opportunity to be here on Don's show. I now understand that I have to ask the audience's permission and thank the audience before I thank Don. But I've been working with Don now for a couple months, trying to understand how to build my brand, how to improve my relationships or build my community in the larger sense. And so I've been a guest here on the show, and I'm learning how to be a guest, but I'm also studying Don intensely to see how to be a leader or moderator of a show like this, so that I can graduate to my own show here early next year. But in Don's coaching, a couple of weeks ago, less than 2 weeks ago, he's like saying, well, to get people to know you exist and point to the LinkedIn live show, you need to do a newsletter. And he was just throwing it out. It wasn't like do it immediately, but by evening that night, I decided I would go for it. And I posted my first newsletter on December 1st. And I'm now over 360 subscribers in less than 2 weeks. And it's basically solidified all the people who were my followers. I had over 4,000 followers, but I didn't know who they were, what they were doing, or if they cared. And this like created a new tier or a new level of engagement. And now they're getting my message every day, where I try to send out a new lesson on raising capital. So it's been a grand adventure, but I feel like I'm just getting started. And that brings us to our word of today for qualify. So qualify to me as an entrepreneur means that I get to enter the door, I get to pass through the gateway to do something I want to do, but there's no guarantee or assurance I'm going to get what I'm looking for. So if I qualify for a loan, that's where a bank has set its standards or criteria for what they're willing to lend on. But when I submit my loan application, because I am qualified, they won't look at it otherwise. They still may turn me down. And that's because everybody who's a source of capital, you're competing for that money. You're not the only one who is submitting an application or a pitch for money. And but if you're not qualified, if you haven't met their criteria, one, you won't get in the door, and two, you shouldn't be talking to them anyway because you're wasting your time.
Well, I think that's, where a lot of people continue to do what they do when it's not working, thinking if they do it harder, or they're more dramatic or whatever, it's going to change, where just a subtle nuance of change with a whisper could get you approved, right? So it's understanding where you're short, where you're long, and mostly what is the market interested in, right? Where is the trend these days? Are people excited about your industry? Are you progressive? Are you innovative? But when I think of Qualify, I always think of people first, because unless the person is the right person, I don't want to know about anything else, because there's nothing that's going to compensate or make up for it, no matter how strong the opportunity. It's who do you want to spend time with? Who do you want to learn with? And who do you want to build a future with? Because transactional relationships are just very cumbersome, because you're always creating new ones and saying goodbye to old ones, and you're touching whatever the priority is, but you're not really getting any deeper. So, the nice thing that about working with Carl is I got to know him over the last month or two and see how someone responds to other things, not you, right? To other people. And that's exactly how you're going to get responded to in those situations. So if you look for a good person first, and qualify that person, then you can have a good conversation second, and then maybe reach an understanding, and then finally develop something. Because if you're creative and innovative, nothing should be in a box. Nothing should be one size fits all, because then you're transactional. It's easier versus, hey, let's get to know each other. Let's get to understand what we're doing here, and actually let me feel it for myself and experience it. And I found that the more sophisticated anybody is, the buyer, the investor, the easier everything goes, because they're on top of it. You don't have to explain anything, define anything. In most cases, you kind of depend on them to help you out on some situation. So, with Qualify, people first, and then getting to know what you're getting into, and does it fit? Because, just saying, if you don't have time to do it right, do you have time to do it over again? Right? And you're better off doing it right the first time and working it. So anyways, just want to share that Omar's in the house. Omar had a wonderful Zoom party that I was involved with Sunday, and actually became the winner, and went to charity. So it was me, Leslie, and another gentleman, very nice guy. And all of us won because Omar supported all of the charities and put on a great show. And actually, Omar's coming here on the 24th to appear again. Omar's been here before. So thank you, Omar. Check out Zoom Party. Check out Omar. He does almost everything he does after. He's got a full-time job, so he tutors kids. So all this is extracurricular, and he makes nothing for it. So good for you, Omar. So Carl, I really enjoyed how you're taking the bull by the horns and really digging in. And I think one point to your newsletter, and I've got a newsletter and I do it every day, and I don't see why I wouldn't. If someone says, would you like to get your name out to 37,000 people in their email every day by just pushing publish? Well, sure. What else do I got for 10 seconds? Right? I mean, it's just so simple. And once you understand what is 10 seconds or a minute or even 5 minutes, and why not spend a few extra minutes just thinking about maybe improving it? There's no sense running out the door. But just LinkedIn creates these tools. And just like live streaming, we're getting to master this. This is one of the tools. Carl's in our first collaboration group, and tomorrow we're talking polls. And I do a poll every day. And it takes 10 seconds, right? It's just an add-on. It's like, throwing one more suitcase in the car before you take off. And it does incredibly well because it's the vehicle that you can ask questions, get answers, and learn all you want from the people who are following you, which then allows you to start changing your content in relationship to the feedback. So there's a method to the madness. And tagging is a strategy that I used and still use occasionally. You really have the ability to open up the spigot or close it down based on where you're in, what you need for the job. And the other thing is getting known over time by just repetition. Too many people are focused on, I'm going to have a message, I'm going to have a story, I'm going to have a post. Well, yeah, it's good for today. And even if you got 1 million views, tomorrow you're back to whatever you were back to. So, too many times you're excited for yourself and you forget why you're there. It's almost like working in an ice cream store and eating along with all the customers all day long. So, Carl, I believe LinkedIn does kind of know what they're doing. And if they don't, Microsoft certainly does. So, you really are focused on entrepreneurs, typically, solopreneurs. And, how do you see something like this as a competitive advantage, especially when you qualify what everybody's typically doing?
Well, we talked about this on my last appearance, the word distinction. This is the fact that you as an entrepreneur, no matter how good you are, how superior your products or services may be, if nobody knows you exist, it doesn't matter. You're invisible to them. And then even once they see you, you have to stand out. You have to be above the crowd. You need to be beyond your competition. And so right now, as far as I can tell, I'm one of very few people who are publishing a newsletter on these topics. I may be the only one that's zeroed in on raising capital on the entire LinkedIn universe. So by definition, that makes me different. And hopefully the quality of my newsletter makes me better. So that gives me an advantage over everybody else who's not doing it, who's not getting my newsletter every day now by subscribing. And so it gives me this tremendous advantage. I'm not head and shoulders, I'm standing on top of my competition.
Well, you're just starting because you don't know how long it takes to germinate, right? The newsletter is planting seeds every day, and you have no timeline that's relative to doing it before. And I think I'm seeing with 1.5 years of doing what we're doing here every day, there's a cycle, and you need to have the time to see it cycle, where some people leave and then they come back, right? But you didn't know they were coming back. They left. And at a certain point, all you need is enough to support the show.
Right.
Right?
No, that's a point I make to people raising capital all the time, that they only need enough investors to attain their capital goal. But too often they do a kind of a generic reach everybody, touch everybody kind of campaign, which dilutes their effort and increases their cost. When if they needed 5 investors, get 5 and go home and get back to work.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's why I see here is because you always think more is better. And in some situations it is. If it's the same without any extra anything else, sure, more is better. But what is better? And sometimes more takes you away from better. It gets you to bigger, right? So all it did was, magnify what your situation. Now you got more to deal with the same capabilities you had before you had an over demand, right? So when you look at a show, and that's really my whole focus, is getting people trained and becoming self-sufficient enough to have their own show and still be here, right? Nothing should be a walking off. It should be an expansion and an extension, because if what you learned and what you built with is where your community is, then why not have a second location that's primarily yours with the most control you can have. But the key to it is having an audience. Getting a show, once you understand how to do it, is a couple things, 20, $30 to restream, and you can flip the switch and you're live whenever you feel like going live. But if no one's in the audience, or you invite two people and they look around, there's only two people, they're going to wonder, well, why would I come back to this, right? But if you engineer a personality, persona, attractive nature, then the people here will be the people there, because it's almost a no-brainer. Because when Harvey started a show, I was the first guest, Kelly was the second guest, where I go to every one of his shows. So when you look at the audience and you say, hey, all I need is 5 people to ask questions to the panel, and the content is now developed. And then it goes out to the universe and the worldwide audience. And that's another thing, is everything we do continues to do, on YouTube, on here, whatever. So it's almost like residual benefit. Most people are hoping for residual income, but if you can't get that, residual benefits a pretty close second. We've got a LinkedIn user. I think it could be a sheaf. I'll check. Interesting word of the day today. Looking forward to seeing where it takes the conversation. Well, the cool thing, since we've tilted towards business success in some way, where conversation's great, but how much conversation and knowledge do you need before you do something actionable? So, Carl, taking this, I think, a competitive advantage to clients who can now get their voice out. And, I'll tell you what will happen, just like it happened to Harvey and Kelly and myself, is whether you are the expert on finance, you'll be the best known in finance. And it's not a matter of what you know, it's how you can facilitate conversations with the people who want to be heard, and not competed with or matched with, but actually working underneath them to make their experience as quality as it can. So, that should be exciting. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm as you described it, I kind of jumped off the cliff in good entrepreneurial style, and I'm figuring out how to fly on my way down. But I'm still basically trying to figure out where I fit into this. I started a daily newsletter based upon your recommendation that you want to have consistent contact. But my newsletter is obviously a little bit different from yours, and where I have a Sunday edition where I pack it full of a lot more information, and the daily stuff is less, but still a lesson. But as I'm writing that newsletter, I'm targeting one audience, which are potential customers or existing customers, entrepreneurs, small businesses, particularly those looking to level up. Whereas when I do my LinkedIn live show in the future, I want to bring in experts who are my peers in helping other small businesses get going, whether they're in HR, they're in any number of specialty disciplines that can help somebody figure out a particular problem that they need to grow up their business. And so we're targeting 2 different audiences. And then to the thing about numbers, the thing that I've learned from watching your show and your conversation with all of your guests is that the quality of the people who are participating in the conversation, the engagement that's taking place, makes them a community. These are people who can help influence what you're doing, what everybody else is doing. They're not sitting there passively simply sucking up information. They're standing by almost like a backup team or a fire drill ready to jump in and help an entrepreneur alongside of me. And so building that community of people who are also in the game, that's the most important thing here that will come out of all these activities together. And I just see that this show and everything that you're teaching me how to do complements that, supports that. And I see that this is the right path to be on. But it's going to be a while. I talked to a friend of mine on Sunday, Otis McGregor, who does have a LinkedIn newsletter. He's up to a little over 2,000 subscribers. And I said, well, how long has it taken you to get there? And he said about 6 years. And I thought, okay, so I've gone back and done number of projections on how long it may take me at my current rate to get to 2,000. But then I thought, well, I'll be a little bit audacious. I'm going to shoot for 10,000 subscribers so that when I'm working with a client, particularly when it's doing a crowdfunding campaign and we need masses of people to participate, I want to be an influencer. I want to be able to say to 10,000 people, take a look. It may not fit what you want to do, but take a look. And just taking a look changes the entire dynamic of that type of a campaign. And that's where numbers do count, but they have to be numbers of people taking action, not numbers of people just watching.
Yeah, so true. I mean, there's so many tailgaters that should be on the field or at least in the stands, and eventually it's just dissonance. It's distraction. It's disruption in so many ways. And when you have nothing, numbers look really good. It looks like everybody's having a good time. But is this a party, or is this really a professional group of people who want to do knowledge sharing and want to get to know people? And what I love about this show and other shows like it is access to people you would never meet because someone else met them and now introduce them. Beverly's here. Beverly does every Tuesday, and had an amazing Tuesday yesterday. It was unusual in the sense that Beverly suggested Denise Drinkwalter, and we had her as a guest. And I had forgotten I had already invited Kim, who I had met and was just really impressed with. She's out in London. So anyways, make a short story shorter if I can, is start the show and I forgot about Kim, and Kim about 5 minutes later says, you're going to send me a link, or I've been trying to get on or whatever. And I thought I had rescheduled her for the week after, and actually I did, but I forgot to not. Okay. So I said, well, it's my mistake. If you want, here's the link, jump on. And I knew Denise had no knowledge of Kim and Beverly had no knowledge of Kim, but I knew Kim was exactly where they were. And I knew Kim well enough to know she would come in and really do well. And when she came on, it was so harmonious and everybody got to know each other. And at the end of the day, Kim met Beverly and Denise and vice versa. Now they have a connection. They'll probably, Kim sent me an email, said she loved every minute of it and is definitely want to come back and set up a time to talk. And the audience got all this benefit. And I looked at it like this is just a breakfast table. And if someone comes to the door that's a good friend, it's like, hey, come on, we got another seat for you. Because it does show generosity to want to share the spotlight or bring somebody new in and expose them to something that could be life-changing. I know it's been for a lot of people. So anyways, just want to mention that and congratulate Beverly for being so warm and welcoming, and not worrying about who's going to get minutes and who's going to talk, because I think at the end of the day, it was better than it could have ever been planned, just like our conversations. And Beverly comes back with focused conversation leads somewhere. Otherwise, it's just noise. So true, because we have to set the bar because we're here. It's not like what's the lowest common denominator to qualify for here. It's who's actually going to work, at least trying to go to work to learn. And hopefully after they learn, they can go to work to work. And if no one wants to do either one, then why? Good morning from Sonia. I hope I said that properly. Leslie is here, my co-contestant on Zoom party. It's funny how with Omar here and now Leslie here, we come together again. Leslie is Think and Grow Rich on Fridays. Mondays is Mind Over Matter. Yesterday, I participated in her whole show with Catherine, which was showcasing what Leslie and Catherine are doing independently. And Leslie and Catherine are on every Saturday on the Mindset Hour here. So can't thank Leslie enough. Great person. If you don't know her, you're missing something. So get to know Leslie. She's so good-hearted. With that, we've got Dennis, who's our heating and air conditioning guy out in Aurora, Colorado. Thanks for great introductions. That still happily creates great productions. And I see Dennis is supporting, all our other members. I know he's been visiting Harvey's show. Great guy and always very positive and adds so much laughter and smiles to the show. So thank you, Dennis. And yes, perfect pronunciation. Great. Thank you. So getting back to what we're talking about as far as qualifying, I think qualifying an opportunity is a big qualifying effort. What do you think about the ability to really identify and appreciate an opportunity?
Yeah, qualify is another short word for due diligence. It's a longer word. We get to charge more for the big words. But essentially, what you're saying is, I have lots of options. Every day when I get up in the morning, I have 1,000 things I can do. And I need to sort and sift through those to find the ones I really want to do, the ones that advance me and my mission and my clients' projects as much as possible. And so the first thing I'm doing is I'm doing a qualification. I'm saying, is this a project I want to be involved in? I got a call late last night where the guy was expounding upon his idea. And he goes, what do you think? And I said, I disagree with pretty much everything you're forecasting. He says, does that mean you're out? I go, no, but it's not helpful right now because I just don't see the world the way you're seeing it. And so I'm qualifying it. And similarly, if you're going to go out and talk to people, the first key in raising capital that I keep banging on is the person has to know you. You have to have a relationship. And what a lot of people don't realize is that every person that you have a relationship with is a gatekeeper for their entire relationship network. And if you're trying to meet a lot of people, talk to a lot of people in a hurry, you get outside of who you know. You need to talk to people who have their own sets of networks. And people like Don and Kelly and everybody that Don's working with have massive networks. And if they like you and will work with you, they qualify you, then they will open that network to you. And your network just got that much bigger at that time. So yeah, qualification is a way of being more efficient. It's being more focused. And it's also verifying that whoever you're working with, since we haven't found an autonomous relationship yet, they all require constant touch, unlike the electronic cars that everybody's talking about. You have to keep maintaining them. They require maintenance and support and service, and you have to be giving back. It has to be a fair relationship where there's a give and take going on. But once you have that, it's probably the most valuable asset you have in your entire repertoire of anything that you do.
I think that makes a great point. And I think it's so important to appreciate that while you're looking for more, trying to do better, you don't forget what you already have, right? You got to nurture and maintain. It's like a garden for you one day to cultivate and harvest it. And a point I always make is no matter who comments, at least I'll like it. If it's somebody I feel is close and important, I'll comment. Because what I'm learning, and I'm learning quite a bit about the algorithm, and actually the people in the group I've been sharing these videos is another way of saying, here's what I found to be valuable, maybe it's important to you, and hopefully someone sees a video of something that they learned from. And it's just like trading book titles, what I just read, what I'm reading, what it's about. So I think people take for granted the people they have. And I think when you post, in order for that newsletter or poll to be successful, you want people coming back and supporting it the next day and the next day. And if you get a comment and you don't respond to it, it just shows that, hey, it's spaghetti against the wall, right? You take the numbers, but you don't actually have to pay for them, and eventually they go somewhere else. And that's where they should go, is where they're best taken care of, most recognized, and they're doing for you what you may not be doing for them, right? Because everybody here posts. I don't get to look at everybody's post. I definitely don't get the comment, but I know if someone sends me something, I'll take a look at it and I'll at least add some value. The other thing LinkedIn is getting smart with is that if all you're doing is saying great post, it's not even counting.
Right.
So what they're looking for is more depth, more length, and more value. People try to trick the algorithm through numbers instead of quality. And if you make it more relevant, less self-promotional, because, like Kelly always brings up, people pitch you as soon as they connect with you. LinkedIn knows what the comfort level of the audience is. And if you put 4 things about your latest deal, your latest deal, your latest deal, that's going to penalize you. And you get a score for everything. You get points for, you get points against. If you go over 5 hashtags, you're getting pointed against. You might think, well, the more hashtags, the more eyeballs, but LinkedIn is the one who decides who sees it, how many people see it, how often they see it. The other thing they're doing too is they're giving much more credit to your connections and followers. So that means a follower connection that responds to you is different than somebody who's a stranger. And what that means is you're not going to see stranger post in your news feed, because that's where the sympathy story, the dog story, whatever the story that's human nature kind of, is going to tug on your heartstrings and want you to get involved and hopefully comment. And what they're saying is if they're in a different world and they're not connected to you, you're not going to see a lot of that. But on the other side, if they are, you're going to get more of that. And that's where building connections and followers start to make more sense, because my newsletter, I think in 2 days got 7,000 subscribers, but I started with 37,000. And in the first, few days, LinkedIn is out there promoting it to give you a head start. And in less than 8 months, I went from 7 to almost 12. And every day I'm getting 25, 30 every day. And that, so in other words, it just, there's a style to it or a system to it. And once you identify it, you just work it. It's not being creative every minute. Carl?
Yeah, I was going to kind of throw a challenge out to people, because you'll see a post and you like it. You may read it, you may pass it around. But if you don't comment on it, then as far as LinkedIn is concerned, it didn't happen. It's like a non-event. And so, one of the things I'm really looking for right now with my new newsletter is I'm looking for feedback. I'm looking, as a comment, if you don't like something I say, I would appreciate your telling me that. And if I left something out, or you think I took a 100,000-foot view when you wanted more of a 10-foot view, then please provide that feedback. And you can do that in a comment. And by doing that, even if it seems critical or it's a little negative, it's still feedback. And that is valuable to the person who's putting the information out there. And if you want to be part of that community, if you want to benefit from that person continuing to speak and share their information, then it's kind of on you to say, hey, tell me about this, or I didn't understand that, or I didn't like that, and have that conversation start, that dialogue start. But that is something that contributes to the overall community, because other people can see your comment and they can pile on if they agree, or we get to a little side conversation. But that's what this is all about, is having the conversation, not about somebody just tossing information out, day after day.
Absolutely. And again, cost and time efficiency especially have a role here, because all you have to do and be, just like Carl had mentioned earlier, is what's adequate. If you can go beyond that, that's great. But to sustain itself and to continue to create value, that's all you need. The other element is how much change does it take for it to be adequate. And if you create, like my newsletter is the 7 days of events. And today is Wednesday. Tomorrow, Wednesday will be gone. Thursday will take its place. And next Wednesday will show up. So that's really, it's like if you bought a program, right, at a racetrack or at a ball game to see all the numbers and what's going on. That's really what it is. But after watching these algorithm shows, I just decided what LinkedIn emphasizes the most right now is education. They want what you say to have educational value, not, hey, I climbed Mount Everest and now I'm on to this. And, it's not educational, it's entertaining. It may be inspiring, and there's nothing wrong with that. But in other words, here's everything I'm doing. Here's everything I want you to know that I'm not doing, but it's worth knowing. Right? So
Yes.
if you look
Yes.
at go ahead, Carol.
I was just going to say what my first, I'll say 10 newsletters, I put out a lesson, and every day I was realizing, well, it's saying it's only a 2-minute read, and I think everybody would actually would be willing to do a 3 or 4 minute read. And I kept extending the lesson, and then and watching the feedback, I was going like, okay, I need to add an example. I need to give them something to wrap their mind around rather than a maxim. And then today I added actually an exercise. So now every daily lesson will say, here's an example where I applied what I was talking about, but also, reflect this back on you. Here's what you should go home and do today as homework. Because if you apply this to what we're talking about, then this will help you, one, cement it in your mind and understand it better, but this will actually advance your goals, whatever it is that you're trying to do.
Oh, for sure. And, I think when you do something every day, just by doing it, you're going to learn something yourself from doing it. Because if it has value to the outside world, definitely has value to your world. And it's little things, again, done right over time that compound properly. And so my point is you could run the same post for 3 days and you probably won't see any minimization of response. And the reason is most people don't see it. So when they get a second chance, would Coca-Cola create this commercial, run it once and at the Super Bowl even, and never do it again? That's the liftoff. They're going to play that thing until it plays out. And they know when it plays out because they see their numbers and their demographics. So what I look at is if the numbers say, just like your speedometer or gas gauge, hey, you're exactly where you need to be, don't move, right? Just run it and let it tell you when it's getting old. The other aspect is by being an educational influence, it adds to and complements what your primary thing is. In a lot of ways, you could look at it like breakfast, right? If you go out to a breakfast place and you order eggs and bacon and potatoes or whatever, and they give you another order of waffles or pancakes, and you say, wow, this is too much. I think that's what a newsletter should be. Is like, there's a lot here and maybe too much, but I know I can come back and get it later, or there's going to be more tomorrow. That's like the two things you should do in business to get started is sample, which is free, and more people will take a free sample than they pay for anything. And then the next part is to overserve. So when they become a customer or a client or a partner, you want to say, wow, you only thought you were going to get this, you're going to get this, right? And surprise on the upside, because at that point, trust has been built. Your thoughtfulness and generosity to allow someone to check it out for themselves at no risk, end up making a small investment, getting a big return, and then being able to build on that, to me, is the best thing in the world to do. And your newsletter is feeding people every day for free, right? This show is free access to anybody on YouTube or LinkedIn or anybody in the future. And why? Because you want people to come for the purest intentions and leave for the best reasons, right? They're here because it works for them, not because, well, how do I get my money back? Another thing is, good people sometimes don't see the light as fast as you'd like them to. And comfort goes a long way, and also people have to integrate it into their life, and people get habits. And for something to come in, something has to go. And it's easier to retain something to acquire something new. So there's some psychology to it. Let's get back to our audience. Leslie says, thank you for your kind words. Very, very sincere. And I'll tell you, when Leslie supports you, I would go out of my way to support Leslie, because she creates the weekly agenda of all events for us. She publicizes every day my show, Kelly's show, Harvey's show, and about 7 other shows. Dennis comes back with agree with an electric car, you do and will need to stay well connected. And having a sense of humor goes a long way in any relationship. Agreed, need to dialogue in. If don't log in, you're mostly logged out. So Carl, in this dynamic changing world, how do people really polish their brand and get it recognized, and more importantly, distributed to larger audiences?
Yeah, that's a question that I'm facing with what I'm doing now. I'm trying to improve my brand, and that kind of gets into deep self-reflection, which I know has been one of the topics of your show, and about 10 other topics. But you have to know your strengths, and then you really, most importantly, you have to understand where you bring value. If I'm talking to someone who's already done something 10 times, they may know as much about it as I do. Whereas if I've done it 10 times and they've never done it before, there's at least a gap there that I can fill with my experience and my knowledge about how to do something. And I have to be sensitive to the differences between those two audiences, but I want to emphasize what I'm doing so that they get that value. They don't go away hungry. They don't come and go, I was well entertained, but I'm still hungry. I'm going to go find another show that feeds me. So once you understand that, then I think part of the challenge is, as an entrepreneur, you want to make everybody happy. That seems to be wired into your genetic DNA. But what the people you really want to make happy are those who you can benefit the most, because they're the ones who need you the most. They're the ones where the value is highest. And you need to understand who they are, how to communicate with them, how to serve them. And if you do that, then that starts to make you more distinctive. That makes you stand out better, because it's no longer a generic, diluted offering where I'm going to help everybody a little bit. I'm going to help these people a lot. And if you can get to that point and understand who you are and who your best clients or customers or whatever is going to be, then that's the basis for a relationship that should do well.
Well, part of what you're saying, that led me to my next thought is staging. So some things have to be staged based on someone else's time frame, activity level, your ability to service more, and that's when it actually should fit and acclimate. But some people are slow bloomers, right? Some people just need more information, need more time, need to talk to whoever. Some people are extremely impulsive that once they get excited, they can't wait to sign the papers and let's get going. And most people kind of fit in the middle. And I think allowing people to get a head start before the game even begins, right? And that's what this show does. Everybody can meet me and you, never be connected, never communicate. And that's what was fascinating from one of these videos. And, you should always be looking for information about whatever you're doing to fortify the ideas, because most people here are just ignorant. They're good enough, they're just not smart enough in the ways of how to do it right. If you went to play golf tomorrow and you compared yourself with the pro, it's never going to work out. And if you don't take lessons or read or do something and you just have a ball and a club and a hole you need to get it into, that's a whole different ball game. But through YouTube, the first thing I do is just to practice something new. I spend 30 minutes. I'm going to invest 30 minutes and I'll try to get to 3, 4, 5-minute videos. So in 30 minutes, I'll see 6 experts. And what's so fascinating and has so much opportunity, I've been just chasing algorithm. I found 2 more yesterday were very good. But in all of YouTube, if you type in LinkedIn algorithm, you might get 10 or 12 or 15 tops. I only identified 6 that were worth sharing. And these are over 5 years. You can exclude anything. I mean, there's a gentleman, Nathaniel Biddy, actually, he's in Australia. And his last lecture I watched, he says, if you saw me 2 years ago, 60% of everything you learn doesn't have any relevance anymore.
Right.
So I only said what's been published in the last year. I don't want to know 2019 LinkedIn strategy. I mean, it's that day's been had. So the point is why not self-teach yourself? And in 30 minutes, anything you hear or learn, I mean, polls. You can go to YouTube, type in LinkedIn polls. They'll have 4 or 5 videos. It'll give you their tips. And a lot of times it's a nuance. But the big thing about the algorithm, and no one knows what it is, it changes by the second, and there's multiple algorithms, and it's very complicated, is that if that's what people are favoring, not people, LinkedIn. I mean, when polls came out, you won't believe this, I was getting 3,000 replies a day, 3,000. And all of a sudden it went to 300. Because LinkedIn decided, hey, we're going to be promoting live streaming now. Polls have got their exposure. They give all this free organic reach because they want people to populate it. Because hey, you get 10 times your time if you do that. Once it's going and it's going well, they say, okay, where are we missing? And then they put the emphasis on there. And if you're up to date, you make the move a little sooner. And you say, hey, if we're going to get extra points for doing this, hey, I'll do that and learn how to do it. And eventually you start to learn how to do everything. And then it becomes an either and, not an either or. Do I do a newsletter poll? Why not? I'll do both. They're independent. The other thing is people who do newsletters probably don't do polls. People who do polls probably don't do live streaming. So whatever is comfortable with someone, you're hitting the same population, but in the ways they want to digest it or their priorities. And really knowing that if you make a post and you can distribute that same information in different vehicles, again, you're getting leverage. So anyways, let's see. Okay, got there. Here's a new comment. You are gentlemen so charming with your hats. I truly appreciate all the knowledge you are sharing with us. Keep going with good work. Well, thank you so much, Bojana. Wow, it's almost Christmas. You look like Santa. So, because of Bojana, we've got a change of hats. It just shows how fast we react to the audience and how quickly unanticipated change can take place. And, that's the fun of it. In some ways, honestly, I look at this as theater. This is real art, just like a symphony conductor brings audiences in, brings certain parts of the orchestra, brings the whole thing, changes that. And, if you're creative, this is a playground. Too many people are just black and white, words on paper, messages to whatever, when they're really missing the boat. So, Carl, now that you're in a jolly mood, what do you think about qualifying now that we've gone up and down and around?
It's interesting because essentially the backdrop for this communication is LinkedIn. And LinkedIn has its own agenda and it has its own qualifiers, which is what you've been talking about with the algorithms. If you don't put something on LinkedIn that aligns with their interest and their agenda, they will disqualify you. They will shorten your message or cap your message or do something else. So in a way, we're talking to our community, to our audience here. At the same time, we're doing it with the permission and authorization of LinkedIn. And they have their own interest in helping us get a good message across, a quality message across. And the fact that Don is doing so well with his program and everything that he does is an indication that he's in alignment. He's qualified by LinkedIn to tell a good story that advances things that they want to see. And so anytime you're using any platform of communication, you have to qualify yourself, and is your message something that is helping them help you to share your message. And so it's an interesting thing to listen and watch everything move and change with the algorithms because LinkedIn is spending a lot of time and money trying to advance its platform, and Don is taking best advantage of that because he's qualified by them for them.
Well, so well put. And, to add to that, people don't appreciate we're riding on this train for free. This is the LinkedIn and this is the YouTube train. And even if you said, wow, I'm so grateful, the admission price is following their rules, supporting what they want supported. They're the elephant in the room. They're the third party to everything you do on LinkedIn, whether it's your newsletter, because everything gets, if you hit a post in 5 milliseconds, that's how long they take to qualify if this is valid. If you say something that's very controversial and could be viewed negatively, it never sees the light of day, and then you get penalized, right? If it does get through and it has no value in their opinion, it gets no viewership. So you could see, hey, the post is live, no one's ever going to see it. And if the people who have been supporting you, that's another reason why you don't want to get involved with people just because of the vanity numbers. If you're into mining and everybody responding is into surfing, they'll figure out there's no relevancy here. They're doing it just to get your numbers up, and you're doing it to get their numbers up. And it's so obvious because then they look at who comments on the comment. Right? So if it's just the same 20 people who just comment, LinkedIn they don't even inform you. They just cut you off and you never know it. And meanwhile, you're seeing the numbers thinking it's getting exposure. And that's why interaction is so important. I think to Carl's point, you need to have a call to action that isn't salesy. And I think the key to it is asking people, what do you think? And they don't leave a comment, a like, or share this. That's something they really get down on. But it's easier to say, I'm always interested in what you have to say, or, and if you have something, please share it in comments. Some people who used to boost their numbers quite a bit would say, where you're from, right? Just type in where you're from, and everybody would be Ontario or Michigan or whatever. And you get a ton of responses. Yeah. But LinkedIn says, what does this mean to anybody? So anyways, what is phony, LinkedIn double knows it's phony because they see it over everybody else. And I think to what we talked about earlier, if you know where the points are to be acquired, and you know where the points are to be lost, not losing is winning, right? So if you're at 10 and you got -5, you're at 5. You'd be better up at 7 and never tempting the hands of fate to correct you. And plus, you got a pattern. And I think LinkedIn looks at trends and patterns. One screw up, the guys or gals, pretty down the middle. Okay, but if this is continuous, and if you get blocked, if you get reported, that weighs against you. So your report card is dynamic. It changes by the day, but most of the time you don't know any better, or you think, hey, where is the border here? And sometimes you cross it. And sometimes you say, I don't ever want to deal with that stuff. Because one thing I'll tell you, shortcuts are shortcuts. They're not long-term strategies. And what difference does it make if you got 500 more comments? It doesn't monetize. It doesn't manifest into anything. It just says a lot of people got excited and did something. So anyways, just trying to put in perspective, because it took me, I've been posting every day for 4 years. It took me 2.5 years to figure out there's a live streaming capability. And it took me about 6 months to figure out everything I thought I knew was wrong and needed to be replaced with what works and what's right. And now I feel like anybody coming into this program, because of best practices, because in most cases, all you gotta be is good enough not to be bad, and you're in the game, because there's so few players and so few good players. So I think that's the qualifier, is knowing one thing for sure: it's a huge opportunity. And it's one of the best opportunities for businesses and professionals than anything out there. So why not transform your business? Why not transform your ability to get smarter, better? When I'm on the show with Carl or Kelly or anybody, I was just thinking the other day, I'm with coaches and professionals that I could never make an appointment or get to see, even if I wanted to, right? And like this Sunday, I'll be with Sarah, and she's a tremendous coach. And it's a great lesson for me to learn from her and actually to share, and hopefully she learns. And then the audience is all gravy and whatever they learn. So if wherever you start is all you need to justify doing it, and there's all these collateral benefits in addition to it, it's like the last thing I would do, because I thought to myself, well, you need to do it every day. And I said, well, if it's 9 o'clock my time in the mountains, right? At 9:01 tomorrow, if I'm not doing it, I'm looking at the clock telling me it's 9:01, right? And I could be part of it. So anyways, if you put in perspective that you can enjoy, you can learn, you can grow personally and professionally, plus now you can get a tremendous competitive advantage in the marketplace. And you have to realize, and I think this is so vital, you're one of a billion. How much could you ever accept? If 20 clients came to you right now and said, we need to start tomorrow, you say, I can't handle 20, right? I would start qualifying, right? I'd love to have 20 and say, I only got spots for 5, and now I get to pick. And I get to tell you the scarcity is on my side, not just on your side, what are you willing to do? And that changes terms, that changes conditions, and it also changes patience and perseverance with someone, right? If you got 6 people knocking at the door who want to get in and you're dealing with a complicated, difficult person, you're far more inclined to move things forward. And why not be in a position where all you have to do is the best you are at what you do, not at marketing, not at relationship building, but on actually deploying what you have. And that's all you could want. So with that, it's 1 o'clock, or not 1 o'clock, it's 1 hour o'clock. And went through the show pretty quickly. Want to thank Carl again. I'm loving these conversations because you're starting to ask and answer questions that are important to you, right? Not just generalities or what's going on in the world, but it's actually, specific to the person, where they're at, what they're doing. And, you forget how exciting it is to learn things after you've learned it for a long time, right? The first time at a newsletter, the first time at a live stream is totally different than 100 newsletters later, right? Because you built confidence, you built time and practice behind it. So with that, Carl, final words.
Well, I just want to thank you again for the opportunity to be on your show and being part of your cohort that you are sharing all of your knowledge with about LinkedIn. I could never invest the time, have the time, the experience. So you're accelerating my capabilities very, very quickly, and it's showing up across the board with my new newsletter. So I thank you for that, and I'm going to continue to qualify people to join my community and invite everybody to apply. So,
well, I can't wait for 6 months or a year to go by and say, well, here was the before picture, and here's the after picture, or the today picture. And I hope the stories of Carl can do it, I could do it, right? And I think that's important. And last thing is, success is the greatest promotion for more success. Right? It's easier to show and better to show than to tell, and when people see it, I think that's when things start to change for them. Another thing, if not, be a great supporter. If you can't take the trip, at least share other people's trips with each other, because that's the foundation. Being humble, being somewhat modest, being a team player, and being the stand-up person that people know, hey, full of integrity, and somebody I want to promote because it's a gift to the person I'm sharing that person with, possibly. So with that, Bojana finally says, great, with Santa Claus as an emoji. So thank you, everyone. Come back tomorrow. Tomorrow is Thursday, and I'll tell you really quickly who we have on Thursday, if my thing will load. Is Kelly. That's easy enough. It's every Thursday is Kelly. Thank you.